Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you guys have been having a good day, and today I hope that you will like our painting in Procreate. I'll be teaching you another drawing today, and it's going to be a cat in front of a sunset cityscape. So, first things first, we want to get the background, and I've decided to use purple and pink. They go very well with each other. You make it into a gradient going from dark to light, and because it's a sunset, we'll have some yellow right at the bottom where the sun is about to go down. Gaussian blur for the layer is basically making everything blur together beautifully. So, as you can see, that makes a very nice background compared to what we had before the Gaussian blur. Now, we're going to create some railing and changing the brush, inking a technical pen. That's the pen that I use the most when drawing. Connect that line to make a shape. That way we can drag the color and fill it in. We're going to make the top railing now by increasing the brush size a little bit, and then decrease it a little for the bottom rail, and then decrease it a little bit more for the actual vertical railings. So this is the railing that our cat is going to be sitting on top of, gazing out at the cityscape. But we're going to do that one last. And first we'll make a layer and bring the railing on top so that it's on top of that new layer that we made. I'll choose a color. We'll go with blue buildings. Now the one in the front will be the darkest, and as you can see, I'm trying to make it all in one line. Don't fret too much for it being perfect, because once you make a very brief outline, you hold it and Procreate will make it straight for you. Remember to connect the line on both sides and then drag, drop. Voila, you see that the color is filled in and it is behind the railing. Now, let's do another layer and another set of buildings. This time it's going to be behind this first set of buildings, and it's going to be a little bit lighter. Again, just briefly do it, hold it for a few seconds, and then connect the line together so that we can drag and drop to color it in. Great. Make one more layer underneath that, and we'll use a I was sort of thinking of vent pipes that go out on top. I am not an architect, so I don't really know too much about, well, building architecture, but railings for safety, because safety is number one. And as you can see, zooming out a little bit, it looks nicer than, just the plain lines behind. So, just making sure to disrupt that smooth lines in the drawing. And so, I was just trying to think of ways to break up the lines, and I was sort of unhappy with this one, so I put two poles there instead. Perhaps they are exhaust fumes, but I put these little steps on the side of the building, sort of like spikes. I've seen it before when I went on vacation once to Korea, and we'll put it on the other side as well. I feel like there is a lot of beautiful architecture out there, and the great thing about a city is that it's busy. There are buildings everywhere close by, and everyone's living really close to each other. Everything, food, shopping is close to each other, and sort of claustrophobic if you put it in a bad way. So I wanted to make sure to get that sentiment with these buildings, because, well, there's barely any space to breathe with them, and you can always change the shape of your buildings afterwards if you don't like the rectangular one. Remember that we tried to make the buildings all in one line. Now if you make it too irregular, sometimes Procreate will get wonky and it'll make it into random zigzags and completely lose the buildings that you outlined before. So I like to play it safe and do similar shapes so that Procreate has an easier time of helping me make it straighter. But I always use rectangular shapes first, and then you go in a second time like we are doing now to change the building shapes and add in little details. So, making sure to make this cityscape more detailed is what we're going for. Now we are almost done with our second layer. I put these little spikes on top because I thought it would look interesting. And again, you can always change the shape of your buildings. I actually recommend you do so, because having just a rectangular shape can be a bit boring. So adding more shapes on top is great. And usually what I noticed with the buildings in the city is that they are very edgy. So adding in rectangles or trapezoids are what I like to do, but you can always add in some semicircles on top. And what I like to imagine is that those semicircles are actually glass panels, and that when the sun is shining, it shines down through that glass so it already closes the line for it. And that's why we're able to drag and drop and color in these shapes without having to close them. So I'm just making the last touches to our last building. Again, rectangles are always a good way to go, and triangles if you want. And looking at it, I sort of wanted to change this shape up a little bit more because our eyes are sort of attracted to that area first when we look at the picture. And now the final product of our building details will be shown. And there you go. As you can see, it looks a lot better than previously with just the lines. Now we're going to add some shading to the buildings, changing the brush to an airbrush, lowering the opacity and the brush size a bit, and alpha locking it. Basically, alpha locking lets you only color the layer, and nothing outside of the layer is going to get colored. So we're going to add a lighter shadow from the bottom, and that's because there are lights below on the street level, and the sun is also setting. It's lower, and that's why we're gonna add that highlight on the bottom of the buildings that illuminate them, making sure to alpha lock the layers each time and making sure to highlight with a lighter color. Okay, and lastly, I wanted to add another layer for it to have a little bit of fog-like substance near our railing. So lower the opacity a bit and making sure we have the right brush and creating this kind of city fog. I like to say you can go lower and lower in opacity because the fog starts to rise up, but it also gets less intense. And right now I'm doing my best to smooth it over, but caution, blurring it makes it a lot smoother, as you can see. And with that, we have our city fog. Great. Lastly, well, sorry, not lastly, we still have our cat left, but we want to now draw the sun. And I am going to make it white this time using a technical pen again and bringing that layer all the way underneath because we want it to go behind the buildings. We don't want it to show up in front. So drag and drop to color it in, and caution, blur it to make the edges a bit blurry like an actual sun would. And now we're going to duplicate the layer, and then we're gonna lower the opacity of it to make a more translucent white. Now select it and make it bigger. And the reason we're doing that is we want to make these halos, and we duplicate it again, lower the opacity even more, make it bigger, and put it behind. One thing to take note is that these halos get exponentially bigger as it becomes more and more further away from the actual light source. So duplicate it one more time, lower the opacity again, selecting it and making it bigger, and making sure that the distance gets larger and larger. Now our last halo, you can barely see it, I don't know if you can, but with that we have our sunset to be more specific. And now I want to make some seagulls, birds, which is sort of what I think of when I think of a cityscape, especially one that's near the sea. And that's sort of what I'm imagining this place to be. And with that, we can make a few seagulls. The closer they are to the sun, the smaller they would be, because if you think about it, the sun is the furthest out from us. It's behind that light blue building. So taking that into consideration, we have our birds. And because it's sunset, I thought it'd be pretty cool if we had some stars that we can see. So we click the glimmer brush and we use it all over the sky, which is turning into night, and I think it makes it look really beautiful. I added a bit more stars on the very top, the darkest area, because if it's darker it'd be easier to see the stars, so we make it more dense. Now, the thing that I was looking most forward to is our cat. Changing our brush to the pen again and just drawing our cat on top of the railing. Now, we want to make sure that we have the right proportions for it, so I'm just drawing the cat normally, and then we'll sort of see how we can move it to the top of the railing as we want. But what we do is first draw the figure of a cat, and then we're going to color it in, because today's kitty is a black one, and selecting it and moving it right on top of the railing right there. And that is the beauty of digital drawing, that you can just move your work or erase it a little bit and fix it, compared to doing it on paper and pen, because then sometimes you have to erase all your work, or if you did it with paint, then it's sort of hard to easily fix small mistakes like this. So, drawing the cat's tail, I wanted it curled around the railing, and I thought its neck was a little too long, so I moved the head down a little bit too, and just adjusting the drawing a bit with the ears. And lastly, showing